Welcome back, Mr. Ved Prakash, Senior Business Development Leader, Banking, India, SAARC, Thales. Prakash is Senior Business Development Leader with Thales Group India. Ved is responsible for growing the data protection business in the India and SAARC region. Ved has more than 18 plus years of experience in technology advisory and consulting. Prior to joining Thales, he has served as General Manager, Digital Solution in Xerox Corporation and has worked in past with HP Enterprises and Palladian Networks in domains such as cybersecurity, managed security operations center, implementation of security standards such as ISO 27001, PCI DSS. So the topic of presentation for Mr. Ved Prakash, data-centric security approach and measures to safeguard against rising data breaches, incident, and cyber threats. So I think you are ready with your presentation, and shall we go ahead with this?
Yeah, thanks, Hina. I would be sharing my screen. Let me know it is visible to you, and then you give me a heads up. I will start.
Okay.
Is the screen visible?
Yes, it is visible to us now.
Great. Yeah, so thank you so much, and thanks for a good introduction. And I would quickly get started with the topic today. And it is very relevant in current scenario where we need to look at how do we address the rising data security breaches which are happening across the industries today. So the agenda that I have is I will quickly cover in brief about my organization, Thales, and then we will quickly get into understanding what are these typical data breach targets that attackers are after, and what is that organizations are actually looking for today. This would be very relevant for most of the audiences to see where are the really intervention areas that organizations need to look in addressing those problems in data security. What are certain key problem areas with data moving in cloud? Then we will discuss on terms of what is that data-centric approach and the data-centric security shift that's happening, and how is Thales bringing a data-centric security solution to address the data protection requirements across your organization. What is the typical reference deployment architecture? Then we will also cover how this technology platform addresses most of the regulatory compliance guidelines and mandates applicable. And in the last, we will have a summary slide which will talk about the key takeaway in terms of ideas that or the best practices that organizations need to consider. And if time permits, we will take the questions. So Thales is a French company, is a global leader in encryption and key management solution, and we are spread across 68 countries. We have 81,000 employees base, and we have done the revenue of $17 billion euros. So a significant point out here is that we spend roughly 1 billion euros in our R&D to innovate the products or the technologies to cater the emerging threats. And we work in very strategic areas which are spread across defense, government organizations, banking. So I represent the Thales Cloud Protection team, where we are securing more than 80% of the world's payment transaction data using our solutions. So brief info on our market-leading solutions. We are the #1 leaders in providing the crypto processors, which are known as general-purpose HSMs or the payment HSMs. And then we have this data security platform through which we address the issues related to the data protection by offering you data encryption and key management. And we provide you high-speed encryptors that addresses the issues when you move your data from one link to, say, DC to DR. How do we ensure that the data is being secure? So all our solution products are the leaders in this space. So now we come to a very interesting point, which is what are these data breach targets? And typically, if you see, it is the different type of data that need to be protected in current scenario. So apart from personally identifiable information, which we know contains your Aadhaar number, PAN, or any information which is able to identify a person, we have this financial information, which has the credit card numbers or bank account details or your health record information or going forward, organizations' IP, that becomes very significant to protect. We have our legal contract documents, we have our case studies and analysis from respect to pricing and competitor information which organizations need to protect. And last but not the least, very important is the IT security data, which considers all your usernames, passwords, your security strategies, topology diagrams, network structure, and all. These are the kind of data that you need to protect, which are very prone to any of the data breach attacks that happen. So this speaks to what is that organizations are actually looking for today. So if you see, primarily organizations are looking to address 5 functional areas, which are primarily leading to address the data at rest, data in motion, then how do we do the key management and have the centralized control around it? How do we define the role-based access for authorized users versus unauthorized users who are not able to get access to data? And if we are moving the workload to cloud, how do we ensure that the security of data in cloud is managed from the same solution or same platform? So all of these areas which organizations are looking for addressing the concerns around the data security. One of the number one challenge that most of the IT stakeholders are facing when they are considering a cloud adoption is primarily the presumption of losing your control in terms of how do I maintain the security controls of the cloud infra, or how do I manage the PII data risk which would be there. So very important point out here is that cloud service providers do offer the native data security controls in terms of encryption and key management. But what happens is that the keys are not owned by you. So in theory, it could be that the cloud service providers, administrators, or privileged users may try and look at the sensitive data lying at their end, which no organization would like or want. So a very important question that comes also for the stakeholders from security perspective is how are these keys being stored? Who is accessing these keys? And how do I get control of these keys? And a very important point also is that how do you decouple the encryption keys from the data sets? Now, encryption keys should always be segregated and separately managed from application owners in a certified key management solution. So we will see how we address all these problem areas with the unified solution approach that Thales will present. So as you're responsible for your data security, what do you do? So the very first process that starts is basically accessing the risk related to your data, both from perspective of external risk as well as internal risk. Now, external risk, as we understand it, the threats originate from outside the organizations, and the threat actors attempt to exploit on the attack surface which exists outside your firewall. So maybe the attacks like phishing or malware, ransomware, all these constitute the external data risk component. Now, very important is the internal data risk, where the threats originate within the organization, which could be because of the weak security policies or because of your inaggregate segregation of duties, which at times lead to the misuse or the insider threat scenario. So we need to identify, first of all, the risks associated with this data. Then we need to move to data-centric approach. So if you see traditionally, there has been a focus mostly on the perimeter to network security. Now with the latest emerging threat scenarios, the focus has moved to purely data-centric security approach. So what the data security approach means is that it gives you a protection which is applied to the data itself, independent of your data's location. So to make it effective, it should happen automatically. The sensitive information should be identified as soon as the data enters in your IT ecosystem, and it should be secured with a policy-based protection that lasts throughout the data lifecycle. So each organization have their own business need to and threat exposure in terms of managing the risk with the data. But typically, the characteristic of a successful data-centric implementation is that you should have a centralized management which gives you a coverage across the complete organization business processes without any security gaps. And very important part here is that it should have an automation built in rather than a manual intervention, so that when as the business processes grow, I mean, the data-centric security principles would help you to address rather than re-looking back to your data-centric approach that you consider in the beginning. So these are very relevant pointers in terms of looking at data-centric security approach. So now we come to talk about what constitutes an effective data-centric security. So this is where the elements that comprise for effective data security are data discovery, data classification, data protection, centralized key management, monitoring and auditing. Now, data discovery helps you to know where your sensitive data is lying, and classification helps you to know type of data, whether it is sensitive, confidential, or restricted, or open for public. So you all need to protect your sensitive data regardless where it flows or resides. And to do this, determine where your sensitive assets are located across your on-premise, cloud, and virtual environment. Search your file servers, applications, databases, virtual machines for the data that needs to be protected. And centralized key management is which helps you to get the essential to ensure that data is protected across according to the organization's security policies, and the data remains available for appropriate use. So the centralized encryption key management helps you in providing role-based encryption access control, which helps you to address very question like how are we achieving the separation of duties in the encryption process implemented in the applications, and how do you make sure that all the keys at different applications can be managed without fail automatically, they can be rotated periodically, as well as how do you improve the compliance and monitoring with respect to the compliance mandates that are applicable. So this is what constitutes typically effective data-centric security approach that would address the areas for data protection in an organization. Another big point is that there is a shift happening from point solutions versus platform. So what I mean is that point products which are addressing only silo use cases, which were used earlier for addressing the areas related to security or devices, but they were not suited on as data-centric security model. Now, over the time, if you see, there are a lot of single-purpose tools which are on disjoint technologies that can only secure a specific type of data system or environment. And as such, you need to get rid of this piecemeal approach, and you need to have a product or a platform that helps you, that gives you a full set of capabilities that provide options for adding new capabilities in future without coming back to reinvest in the data security measures that you have taken. So this helps in terms of giving you a future-proof kind of a platform, a future-proof kind of a use case where same solution can extend to multiple use cases as the business grows. So that brings us to the Thales all-in-one platform called CipherTrust Data Security Platform. And this is which addresses both the components of data privacy as well as data security. From data privacy perspective, it helps you to know whether your sensitive data is, what type of data it is, what is the risk score of the sensitive, basis which you take the remediation controls like encryption, tokenization, key management, or access control relevant. And it helps you to broadly do the discovery, protection, and control of your data everywhere across your organization. So it is a very modular kind of an integrated tool that addresses broad range of your security objectives, and it helps you to secure data across all your environment, which includes your physical, virtual, cloud, and big data. It offers you support across the server, across the server platform like Windows, Linux, or Unix. And what really sets this apart is that it gives you a centralized control you need to keep your distributed data safe. So, and you can have a basis of the journey on data protection that you bring in you can do a file level protection, or you can put it or use the database protection, or you can protect the data right at the application where it is created. Or if you're moving the workload in cloud, you can do the cloud security protection by using BYOK or BYOE, which is bring your own key or bring your own encryption approach. And this is the same one set of solution that addresses the end-to-end security related to complete data lifecycle. So very important piece from one of the components that I would like to talk about is the transparent encryption. Now, transparent encryption helps you to prevent any of the insider abuse or that arises. And this solution is at file level and can be applied to all the databases irrespective of the vendors. So be it your MS SQL, MySQL, Postgres, or Oracle database, which has this sensitive customer data which is stored centrally from multiple business applications. So this secures you both structured data outside the database without any application or IT changes, and allows you to achieve both the security as well as the operational efficiency while avoiding the deficiencies of native TD that is provided by the respective database vendors. And another important point is that this also helps you to secure your sensitive data related to the files of your applications, which consist of the passwords, connection details, properties. So it helps you to encrypt all those sensitive files on the respective application servers. So this is one of the most popular ways that organizations have implemented, which addresses 90% of their data protection. If you're moving it on cloud, as I called it, bring your own encryption and bring your own keys is the way forward. Bring your own keys is where customers they have the control of the keys that is being imported on the cloud, and it helps you to mostly address the scenarios with respect to SaaS and PaaS applications. Whereas if you are using infrastructure as a service, then it is recommended to go for bring your own encryption, where you own and manage the keys that encrypt the workload moving on cloud. So these are the way forward and the advantages that you get over the native cloud encryption, which organizations are not considering currently with light of the data security issues that arise. So brief reference architecture, if you see, there is the same solution or same technology of key management where you create the keys, and these keys can be imported in the cloud for bring your own key, or you can have the agents deployed on the cloud for bring your own encryption, and the same key manages both the same solution manages both the concerns on the on-premise as well as on the cloud. So this is the reference architecture that we have implemented across large organizations. You can get in touch with me if if any of you are interested to explore this further. So a considerable benefit out of this solution is that it helps you to meet across the regulatory compliances that are applicable today, right from the RTI guidelines to IDRBT to Cloud Security Alliance recommendation to GDPR to upcoming data protection bill. So very common denominator, if you see across all these stringent compliance mandate, is that they ask you for data encryption and tokenization, define an access control against privileged users, and secure the key management. So this is where this platform addresses the entire applicable regulatory and compliance mandates today. So that brings me to a concluding slide that what are the key takeaway or the measures that organizations need to relook at, and that just starts with encrypting your sensitive data, have your cybersecurity strategy inside out, define your cybersecurity policies where you have the encryption key management policy defined for your organization, which ensures that your encrypted data encryption keys are kept in a separate environment. You have a file-level encryption in place, which addresses 90% of the requirements for on the data security for both structured and unstructured data. And if you are considering to move your workload in cloud, ensure that the encryption keys shall not be stored in the cloud, but it should be maintained by the cloud user as per the security guidelines. So this will enable you to comply with certain regulatory mandates as well. And last and most important is that data encryption helps you to prevent against all these latest ransomware attacks, as well as gives you protection from insider threats like privilege usage, misuse, or help the system admins are stopped from looking at the sensitive data. So security and privacy goes hand in hand, and this is which Thales brings to the solution that addresses the issues related both with privacy and security. So I would conclude my presentation here. Any questions? Welcome. If you want to reach out to me, you can contact me at my email ID. You have my mobile information.
Thank you, Mr. Ved. We shall get in touch with you if some queries are there or someone wants to have any questions. We'll definitely get in touch with you. Meanwhile, if any of the attendees want to drop any questions, they can drop their questions in the Q&A section given on the left side of your screens. You can write down all the queries there. Thank you, Mr. Ved, for giving an insightful presentation. We'll just move on to the next panel discussion with this. Thank you, Mr. Ved. Prakash, thanks a lot for your presentation. Yeah. So with this, we'll move to the next panel discussion for the day. It's basically the second last panel discussion, which is on instant payments is pending big banking across the world. How will it change the payments landscape in India? We'll quickly move down to those panel discussion. We'll get back in just 1 minute. Thank you so much.